Have you ever walked away from a conversation and thought, that didn't really sound right? Or maybe there's something a little bit dodgy about that person, when you speak to them and there's just that thing, that gut feeling. Well, I'm really curious about human behavior. So today I've got a really good friend of mine, Laurie Warren. She has been on the podcast before, if you look back a few episodes, but she is an ex-FBI agent and a polygrapher. So I'm extremely excited about talking to someone about human behavior, particularly with someone who sat across from so many people that I guess don't necessarily tell the truth for many, many reasons. And that could be because they were trying to avoid the consequences or accountability or to get themselves out of trouble, really. And I want to know what it's like for people when they're under pressure. What are the signs? What shows up before, that moment before someone decides to lie? Can we tell? I really want to understand, I guess, if there's patterns that show up in just everyday life, because one, I'm curious, and two, we do business with people, business in sales, and we have these conversations also in leadership and also, honestly, just to be able to trust your own judgment. My very first question is, you would think that lying looks pretty obvious when you're talking to somebody. But Laurie, from your experience, what does it actually look like most of the time?
Well, I would say that most people who aren't trained in it don't really know what to look for. Now, if they know someone very well, they already have a baseline of that person. So they know when maybe their spouse is lying, or they might know when their sister's lying, because you've got that long-term baseline.
When you say baseline, what do you mean by baseline? Is it?
So baseline would be the normal behavior for you. Okay. So for instance, when I ask my husband a question and he lies to me, he starts laughing.
Yes, straight away I start laughing.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
Because I know his normalcy and I know what he would say if he wasn't lying. So he just bursts out laughing. So if you already know that person well enough to know their baseline behaviors, then you're able to detect it most of the time. I'm not going to say all the time. But if you're working with somebody that you have never met before and you're asking them some pretty hard questions, their behavior, nonverbal and verbal, can tell you a lot.
What's the nonverbal behavior?
So
Signs?
nonverbal behavior would be really heavy blinking. It could be. It could be not blinking. And, because people think if I make eye contact, they think I'm not lying, because that's one of the really regular telltales that has been going around for years. If they're, staring at you without blinking, or they don't even, as a normal person would do in a normal conversation, you would kind of look away at times and so forth. They might just stare at you. Another great one is, and you don't even know you're doing this, is say you're asking someone a question and they say no.
Yes.
Or yes. They don't even know they're doing it because they're under stress. They're under pressure during this sort of confrontational.
So they want you to think yes because they're saying yes, but their body is telling another story.
Exactly.
And so which is the one that you trust?
I trust their body language for sure.
Yeah.
Because even so, when I give polygraphs, they're yes or no questions, right? So the person is instructed to respond yes or no, but there might be a reason why I would go to a silent answer test. Maybe they twitch when they answer, or it affects their body, their physiology. So I'll have them do a silent answer test. And what they do is I'll say, when I ask you the question, I want you to answer in your head, or I want you to nod or shake your head yes or no. And it works because it's when the brain knows you're lying that those chemicals are produced that show your physiology is lying.
Can people get good at it? If you're questioning them quite a few times or practice over time, do you think that they can get better at lying?
I think they can get better at lying, but they can't beat the polygraph because they still know they're lying. And people say, can a psychopath or a sociopath pass a polygraph? And the answer is probably not. And the reason is because unless you completely believe your own lies, which means you're delusional, then you're still going to process the fact that you know you're lying. Another nonverbal that I used to get a lot in some of my cases in the FBI was just burping over and over and over through the interview. Yeah, it's a nervous burp or a nervous twitch or a nervous scratch. So, or they're twirling. This is a good one too. Now, they don't all mean that they're lying. They could be nervous, but it's something to look out for.
What's the quirkiest thing you've seen with someone who's lying?
I don't want to say.
Is it the fart one? Yeah. It's all right. We had that word on another podcast a few weeks ago. So can you tell me what happened there?
A female applicant for the FBI that I was testing in Los Angeles, and she was really late, and she asked if she could use the restroom before we started. We were on the 10th floor, and she was in there for like 25 minutes. So I thought, oh my gosh, did she jump out a window? I mean, it's 10 floors up. She finally came out and said, sorry, my lunch didn't agree with me very well, which was more information than I needed. And then she failed the polygraph and told me that she and her mom had basically been dealing drugs in another country. And so I had her write a statement as to what had actually happened and basically her admission. And as she was writing it, she passed some gas quite loudly. And so I conveniently excused myself from the room while she continued to write the rest of her admission statement. And then I came back a little later.
I wonder, though, if that's just, a lot of these more quirky telltales, that, the twirling of their hair, the burping, the twitching and things like that. Do you think that's more when people are under pressure? Because if you're sitting there getting a polygraph, then you're getting tested.
You do. However, by the time I do the polygraph, they have either done those things or they haven't. And they know they've done them or they haven't. And there's a process during the interview where they start to calm down. They know I'm there to help them, not to hurt them. And I make that very, very obvious to them. So yes, I mean, those things can happen even if someone's very nervous. But when you interview over and over and over again, you start to recognize the signs that are consistent.
Okay. So that's more in the polygraph setting when you're
Yes.
sitting down, you're being interviewed. So if we take that outside now and just with everyday people, we come across people that are often trying to control the outcome. They want an outcome in that situation,
Right.
whether it's to control your behavior or your relationship or make a sale or
Right.
convince you or influence you to do something. So what sort of, I guess, traits and behaviors do you see just in the normal day-to-day? Like, what's something I could be looking out for?
A lot of times is the change in the inflection and the tone of their voice. If someone's voice, you ask them a question, all of a sudden they say, no. Or something that's a little exaggerated, but if they change the tone and the inflection of their voice, of course not. You kind of pick up on that.
You do that well. Do that again.
Of course not.
Okay, so changing volume.
Changing volume. They might, obviously, when someone's talking and it's too good to be true, it usually is. That's another one. I'm so used to just interviews that I know what to look for in interviews and everyday conversation. It's really, if you can talk to that person long enough to get their normal personality and baseline and how they act, and then see what those critical changes are when you start talking to them about business or talking to them about a more business-like or serious conversation.
I mean, I feel like even if I was conducting an interview with potential staff members, this would be quite useful, is just to sit there and, talk to them and make them feel comfortable, whether, you do it in a casual setting or, it's maybe you go through a series of interviews. So the first one's just to getting to know them, and then the second one, that's when
Right.
they're starting to feel more comfortable, so they let their guard down
Right.
a little bit more. I guess
Exactly.
it's more free flowing at that point.
Yes. And another thing you can watch out for is if someone is talking to you and they're telling you a story. Usually when you're telling a story, you have a beginning, a middle, and an end, right? So if you have someone who you ask someone about, well, what happened? And they give you this long beginning, and then the meat and potatoes of what happened is one sentence, and then your conclusion is maybe 5 sentences. You need to really focus on that body because they're probably not telling you the truth. They're evading what actually happened. Another thing people will do is eliminate pronouns to distance themselves from a situation. So someone might say, "Good to see ya," when you'd really usually say, "It was so great to see you." Or "No, haven't seen her," or "Haven't seen that woman." So see the distance. It's not, so if I'm talking to someone about a missing wife and he starts calling her that woman, that's a huge indication that he is separating himself from that situation because he's separating himself from her.
I just having a quick thought then, and I might digress a little bit here, but when you get invited to something, but you don't really want to go.
Right.
So you send your message back. Is it true that those that are potentially not telling the truth, they will overinflate their answer?
Oh, for sure. For
Because
sure.
it's something I notice even myself doing like a long time ago, and then more
Yeah.
so now I'm just a little bit more direct,
Yeah.
which could also come off bad. But
Yeah. And even that, someone who says, "Sorry, can't make it." You might even think that could be deception. Maybe not. Instead of saying, "Sorry, I can't make it." But yes, if you go in and you write a paragraph
I
of
lost
why you
my
can't
dog,
make
ate my
it,
homework, and
right,
then I had a
right.
flat tire, and then rah,
My
rah.
mom's sick, my dad's in the hospital, my car broke down. I mean, goes on and on and on. Yeah, it's probably not true.
Not that we want to be pessimistic all the time and assume the worst with people, but I'm trying to pick up, these little telltale signs. I think
Right.
particularly if you've got staff members or people that you work with that, are constantly doing the same tactics, the same strategies, you start
Right.
to notice them.
Right. And say you're in a business meeting and you ask someone, "So are these your final projections for the year?" And they kind of look at you and hesitate and go, "Yeah." I mean, again, exaggerated, but that's something to pay attention to. Are they really done? Have they really done them properly? Have they really done their homework? I mean, those are things to just consider.
Do you think most manipulation is intentional, or do people just manipulate without even realizing they're doing it?
That's a great question. I think yes, most people know they're manipulating. Unless someone is a serial manipulator, and then that's just their personality. I know people who are serial manipulators, and it's just their way of life.
What's some personality traits or signs that you would see with serial manipulators or even just a standard manipulator?
Well, um, they want to make you feel guilty unless you do what they want, or they threaten you if you don't do what they want. Um, if you asked me to do something and I said no, I couldn't do it, and you weren't really very happy with me that I had said no, you would just say, "Oh, okay, well, I'm kind of disappointed, but I understand."
Yep.
But a manipulative person is going to either get angry with you, they're going to say, "Well, you're going to feel really bad when you find out that such and such happened because you didn't help me." So those are things to look out, and then you start reaching a narcissistic personality as well.
And what's that?
When narcissism is when someone basically has no empathy and they're big time manipulators. That is one of the biggest traits of a narcissist. There's different types of narcissism, and I'm certainly not an expert in that. But One is grandiosity. They think they're better than everybody else. You've met those kind of people that think that they've done it all, and you're a peon. You've done nothing compared to them. Um, so those are the kind of people to really watch out for, because sometimes people, and it also, control is a big part of narcissism and manipulation. So if all of a sudden, I've been, as much as I've been trained, I've been caught up in controlling behavior by someone else, and all of a sudden I realize it and I think, how did I miss that all these months? Or, how did I do that when I know better?
So how do you get out of something like that? If I've also been caught up in a very controlling relationship as well, in a situation, and for months it broke me down to nothing, and it took a very, very long time to get out of that. So time.
Yes.
But how do you recognize the signs? What are the red flags, and how do you pull yourself out of that, or what's something you could do to at least question, is this an appropriate situation?
I think everybody knows in their heart something's wrong in that relationship, right? Something's off. Maybe you're afraid not to address it. Maybe you're so caught up in it that you're actually starting to believe the things that the person is telling you, even though they're not true. You're ugly, you're worth nothing, you can't do anything, you'll never amount to anything. Those are very controlling, manipulative statements. In your gut, in every person's gut, they know that's not right. They know that's not a normal relationship. And I think education, for me, when the light bulb went off in my head of, wait a second, this person has completely taken advantage of me. And then I start reflecting and looking back and back and back, and then start educating myself on the behavior that's happening and what it actually is. And that helped a lot. It really helped a lot. And I think distancing yourself and really cutting off complete contact, if you can, is the best way to heal.
Distance and no contact.
Eventually no contact.
Yep. And that's hard for some people depending on their situations.
Really is.
I can imagine.
Yeah. If a woman doesn't work and she's married to someone who's bringing in money and they've got 2 little kids, and he's telling her she's worthless, maybe even physically abusive, and screaming and yelling at her all the time, and but she has nowhere to go, no money to do it because he's holding out all the money. That's extreme, but it happens every day.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's sad, isn't it?
Yes.
What do you think happens then in high stake environments? I mean, you haven't been in the FBI, myself in the military, and private security space as well. People that are in high C-suite positions, or they're the CEOs and things of their own business. What happens to human behavior when the stakes are really high? You're trying to close that deal, or you're in an uncertain, environment at the time, working undercover perhaps, whatever. How different is it from the everyday pressures?
Okay, so I love that question. And here's why. Because I can really tell you what to look for in these situations. So a person who is under high stress, that's a leader, should never show their emotion. Because say you're a leader, whether you're a CEO, whether you're a supervisor with the FBI, and something bad happens, okay? The more calm the leader is, the more calm your people are going to be. If you go into a rage, they're going to be flailing around trying to figure out what's going on. Nobody's going to get it together. When we have huge situations like 9/11 or a big shooting or a big bombing, and you've got all these different entities coming together, there's a lot of personalities to deal with. And I'll give an example of a situation that happened to me. So I had a boss when I was in Chicago one time, and we were called out on a hostage situation. And I had just come to the division after I got married, and so I was placed on a violent crime squad, and we were called, I was a negotiator, a hostage negotiator in Cincinnati, where I had come from. So we're called out to this. Well, I haven't been placed into the hostage negotiation program yet in Chicago because I had just arrived. So we get called out on this, and I knew a couple of the negotiators because I had been in Chicago before, and I said, and everyone was trying to get to this scene really quickly, but a lot of people weren't there yet. They were coming from far away. And I said, if you need help with the negotiations before the other people get here, let me know, because everyone knew I was a trained negotiator. Well, first of all, while we were at the incident, my supervisor was just a raving lunatic. So what is that telling everybody? A, I don't have confidence in my ability. I don't have confidence in myself. So now why should the people who are working for you have confidence in you? Because it's clear that you can't hold it together. So you don't have confidence in yourself. So how are we going to have confidence if our leader doesn't, right? So we got back to the office, and he started screaming at me for offering my services. And I said, look, I know I'm not specifically on the team yet, but I am a trained negotiator. And he just kept screaming at me and said, don't ever do it again. And that was really not a great relationship from then on. But just watching that behavior, compare that to someone who's in a situation, say a CEO, something's crashing and they're going to lose a lot of money, right? And they're sitting there saying, okay, let's take a step back. Let's talk about this and figure out what our next step's going to be. You're going to think logically. You're going to think actually more quickly because you don't have all this craziness going on, and you're going to get a better outcome. So if you're a boss and you're going crazy inside, or you can't show it. You can't show it, because then your people aren't going to have confidence in you.
I assume there's training you can do to improve that.
Oh, absolutely. There's books. There's so much out on the internet now, probably podcasts.
I'm going to go back to the negotiation piece because I like that. What is the purpose of negotiation?
The purpose of negotiation is that when you have, for the FBI, I'm sure there's other places it can be used, and it can be. You can use negotiation with your spouse or your significant other,
Sales,
or your
business.
children, or your business, or whatever. But in my experience, if, say we have a bank robbery and then the person flees and they go to their house and they lock themselves in their house, and they have maybe a couple family members that they are trapping in that house, holding as hostages. And even if they're in there by themselves. So SWAT is going to be called to go physical if we need to. But we're going to try to end the situation as peaceably as possible, and that's what negotiation is. So me or another negotiator is going to get in contact with them via phone. We've stood outside of homes with megaphones. However, you can get into contact with them safely. And you start very calmly. First, you want to ask them how they're doing. Is there anything you need? And then you want them to start trusting you. And the more they trust you, and you want to keep calming them down. And the more they talk, they aren't shooting, they aren't hurting. So if you can keep them talking, that is a huge win. And then hopefully they'll end up giving themselves up peacefully, and everyone will go home safe.
So basically you are building rapport
Yes.
to encourage trust initially. This could be in any sort of situation.
Yes.
Like I said, in business, trying to, close a deal or anything like
Right.
that. So we're building that relationship. You're trying to gain trust.
Yes.
You're diffusing any sort of anxiety in a
Right.
particular situation, and then you are trying to, I guess, gain an outcome that
Right.
you want.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah, a
And
solution.
that is in and of itself a type of manipulation, but you're using it for the good.
And I guess the selling point for that would be you're trying to ensure that you give the outcome to the person you're talking to, right? They want an
Yes.
outcome, specific outcome.
You have to give them an out mentally, like, you didn't mean to do this. You're just in a really bad place. you rob that bank because your family needs food on the table. You give them any excuse to bite on, and they're like, yeah, they might say, yeah, you're right. Okay, well, why don't you just come out and we'll talk about it more? I'm here to help you, and the old saying, you get more flies with honey, is so true, because if I said, you better come out or we're going to shoot, the person's going to retrieve and not talk to anybody, right? But the more rapport you build and the more they start trusting you, they might ask for a pizza. Guess what? They're getting a pizza. And our SWAT guys might have to deliver it so everybody's safe. They might ask for a case of beer. They may or may not get that. But, so there are things that you do. Okay, so
To appease them.
So now I have a bargaining chip, right? Okay, Mr. Smith, we gave you a pizza. Now can you give us something?
I really relate this to business. You're saying we're literally talking about,
Yeah.
criminals here, but I can
Right.
transfer this over into doing some sales. For example, like I said, you're
Absolutely.
warming people up through emails, through podcasting, through social media, and building this audience. And then you build that trust a little bit where they're a little bit more curious. So then you offer them, something for free
Right.
to do, and then they do it and they're like, oh, I quite like that. And then you're trying to make your sale.
Yes.
Or close the deal
Well, and I think a good leader is someone who provides their people with the necessary resources they need to get their job done, and not be a no. When you're a boss that says no, 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 your people aren't going to want to do a lot for you. If you give to your people and you give them what they need, and maybe Sally is exhausted and needs a day off. Maybe you say, Sally, go home today at 2. Whatever means something to them. Everybody has their currency, right? It could be money, it could be sleep, it could be,
Freedom,
a new
time.
dress, but everyone's got their currency. So once you know your people, figure that out. And guess what? They're going to do whatever you ask them to do because they respect you and they like you as a person.
Does that mean they won't lie to you?
I would say they're less likely. I'd say they're less likely because they aren't as afraid of the outcome, unless it's a huge lie, unless it's something really big.
Yep. All right. After working close to people in positions of power, did it change how you view authority and credibility?
I will say this. Being an FBI agent gives you a lot of power, okay? Being a street cop gives you a lot of power, right? There are some people that take that power and use it for good. There are some who prey on that power and need it in their life. And those are the ones who end up being the less powerful in what they do, unfortunately. There are people that go into positions of power just because they want power. There are people who go into positions of power because they love that job. There's a difference.
Yep. Doesn't mean they get the credibility though.
Right.
What's something you've learned about people that makes you more cautious now?
I would say one is watching their body language and things that they say. One is looking for those signs of manipulation and control. Just verbal, nonverbal. A lot of it is just, can I trust this person? Who are they? Learning them over time. Are they consistent? There's a lot of people. I was talking to one of my colleagues today about someone that I hadn't thought of in years. And they said, oh, did you know so-and-so from New York? And I said, yes, I did. I said, gosh, one day she would be your friend and the next day, she wouldn't even look at you. And that look for those inconsistencies and why. Why are they inconsistent? Sometimes you'll never know. But what do you look for in someone that you want to be a friend or an employee or a spouse or something like that? What are you looking for?
Do you think those people are dangerous, being part of your team or, working for
They
you?
can be, absolutely. And here's why. I worked on a squad, and that's what we called our groups in the FBI. And when I got there, everybody just got along. It was great. I mean, things were fantastic. We all worked together. We literally were there to save each other's lives at times
Yep.
in bad situations. And this one person was put into our group and very toxic. And it affected every single person. It was just a diabolical, toxic group after that because of one person.
What were some of the the things this particular person was doing to make it a toxic environment?
Spreading rumors about everybody else, and saying he said this about you and you said this about him, and just stirring the pot, basically, for no reason at all. Saying people weren't working when they had actually taken vacation time, and that's why they didn't, show up for something, but didn't take the time to find out actually where they were, or maybe somebody was really sick and they, were talking about them not showing up at, a big event, things like that, just not doing their due diligence and then starting to spread rumors.
What causes people, do you think, to become this toxic kind of person, like somebody that actually comes and joins a team and wants to stir the pot like that? Because I've worked with toxic people before too, and it's ended my, not my career, but it's ended that component or cycle of my life very fast through choice. I'm like, it's not even worth it.
Yes.
Being with these people, but I mean, they are out there.
They are,
and they obviously have some serious insecurities.
Yes, they do.
But what causes them to want to disrupt everyone else around them? What's the outcome they're going for?
I don't completely know the answer to that, but I think there are a lot of traits that contribute. First, I would say insecurities, like you said, highly insecure. They could be very jealous for some reason. And that's a big one too. Jealousy causes a lot of problems. It could just be their personality. They might want to separate one group from another because they like this group, but they want to be included in this group. It could be so many things, and I don't know if there's one answer for it, but everyone's worked with someone toxic, and it's not fun. And it's sad because you watch the entire dynamic and how everyone treats each other. It changes completely.
Do you think there's a particular personality trait to look for these people, or that they all have?
Let me think about that. I would say that probably someone that just comes in. First of all, they act like they own the place. A lot of times they come in, have no experience, but think that they're on top already. And so when someone has that kind of false confidence, people start looking up to them for some reason, even though it's a false confidence. But you have to be able to figure out the difference between the two.
And what is it? What are we looking for?
I think you're looking for underlying insecurities, in appearing that they're oversecure. And that takes time.
The couple of people that I am thinking of in this particular moment, because I would assume that they're quite confident people, but the ones that I've been around are the opposite. They're quite reserved. They're quieter people.
Yes.
And they're the ones that come in with all this bravado and just cause trouble.
Yes. Yeah.
And upset the whole dynamic of the team.
Yep. They can be quiet. Or they can be very grandiose as well. It depends on the person. But the quiet ones probably are more dangerous than the boisterous ones.
Yeah, and it was all insecurities.
Absolutely. Or jealousy.
And jealousy, 100%.
Yes.
That's not cool. Not cool at all.
No, not at all. It's sad.
Is there something about human behavior that once you saw it, you couldn't unsee?
Absolutely. Yes.
What is it?
Narcissism.
And how does that look?
If you know anybody who's narcissistic, it might take you quite a while to actually put all of it together. And once you do, you cannot ever unsee it, because every single thing they do, you're like, I get it. Now I get it. I understand it. So that's why when you see some sort of a personality and you want, I do research on it. I'm completely intrigued by different personalities. And so I will do the research and say, and someone might have to bring it to my attention. Well, do you think that person could be this or that? And all of a sudden it's a trigger. I'm like, I never thought of that. And then all of a sudden it starts coming together. And once you see it, you can't ever unsee it.
Because I feel it seems like it's a bit of a buzzword at the moment, narcissism. Oh, that person's narcissistic. Just because they're doing things or saying something that, you don't agree with or whatever. And someone will go, oh, they're just a narcissist.
Right.
But
that's so not true.
Yeah.
And narcissism, that term is thrown around way too much, way too much. But there are people, when you look at the list of traits of a narcissist and someone hits 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10, you can be pretty sure that they are, and if their behavior is consistent. Now, if someone's diagnosed with a brain tumor and they start acting differently and they're frustrated, they're angry, that's a whole different story. But if their behavior has been consistent their whole life,
yep.
then you can pretty much rely on the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. It's going to continue. But yes, the term narcissism is way, way overused.
But you've said that there's some clear, traits and signals there or red flags. Why do you think people ignore them?
Because these people can be extremely charismatic. They can be the life of the party. They can be the one who collects all these friends. But for a narcissist, their friends are there for a purpose. Their friends aren't there because they touch their hearts. Their friends are there because they have a purpose to serve them in their life. And if they stop serving that purpose, you're out of their life. And it can be very confusing, very, very confusing to the person that's being targeted. Yeah.
Interesting. And do you think people can be a narcissist with one person, but then not to other people? Do they choose?
That's exactly what they do.
Okay.
So a narcissist will have a target.
Just one?
It could be a couple.
Okay.
It could be a couple. But they want to be seen socially as the most amazing person that could never do anything wrong. So what they do is they torture, in a way, abuse their target until the target erupts. And then they say, see how they act towards me? And then they cause it and then they play the victim.
Oh.
But they want everybody to see that they are this amazing person. So they get all these people on their side and try to get people away from liking you anymore. And especially the closer people are to their target, the more they try to get them away from them, little by little.
Now, as you say that, I think of the toxic people.
Very toxic. Oh, yes.
Like the toxic people that I was thinking about previously as well. They're most likely they were being narcissistic. Do you think?
They could be. Narcissism cannot live without toxic personality, toxic behavior. Toxic behavior may not necessarily be a narcissist.
Yep, sure. Are there any traits or red flags or things that we haven't discussed so far today that you think we should be aware of?
I can't think of any, but I think that the main goal that I want to tell anybody who's looking at trying to read behavior is you're not going to necessarily figure someone out the first time you meet them because you don't know those baseline behaviors. But the more you get to know them, the more you can see what's normal for this person. What's normal when they're sitting on the couch watching a movie or sitting at dinner having a nice conversation compared to when there may be a conflict or there may be something of importance to discuss. What are the differences in their personality and what changes? And I think you can see a lot of who that person is the longer you know him and the more you kind of study them. And I think we do that normally. Like you and I have been friends for years now. So we know that we like to spend time together, right? And then there's others that, and I love your saying that sometimes someone's in your life for a season because it makes you not feel so bad about,
Cutting people away?
Cutting people away if it's needed. Right. So it's, I've always loved that term that you've said because You can't have everyone that you've met in your life. I've lived all over the world. I have so many amazing friends and acquaintances. I would love to keep in touch with every single person, but there's just not enough time. And so some are here for a season, some were there while I was in that state or that country, and then some are forever friends. So
God, that was a wise woman that told you that.
I know, very, extremely.
Stop it. Look, my last question then here is the number one red flag then, if we see this behavior or this trait, to just totally cut them off.
If you can.
What
I
is
mean,
it? What is it, the trait or the behavior that we're
oh,
looking
the
for?
trait or the behavior. If you see that someone is controlling and manipulating you, and trying to make you feel guilty and targeting you, there's a level of abuse when all of that happens, and toxic behavior when they're trying to pit people against you. It goes along with, I have great friends. I don't need people like that in my life. And the older you get, the more you recognize that you don't need toxic people in your life. They just cause problems.
But you're unlikely to see it in a first meeting.
Yeah, you're unlikely, because usually in a first meeting, someone's putting on their best face, right?
The mask.
So it takes the mask, exactly. And some people can never take that mask off. And then other behaviors start showing. And other people, that mask comes off and all bets are off. You see some ugly behavior. And with narcissists, there's another thing I want to point out. In public, and I think I alluded to this, but in public, like I said, they look amazing. They give, they're gracious, they're nice to people. They take them out to dinner. They do all these things. But behind closed doors, that person that they live with or that target, nobody sees that side of them. And that's why that target is so confined and so isolated and so lonely at times, because everyone thinks this person is such an amazing person, but they don't see who they are behind closed doors.
I can see that behavior in people as soon as you say that. Right, Laurie, this is the fun part. This is my rapid fire 10 questions.
Okay.
It's not a polygraph. It's not a yes or no.
Okay.
But don't overthink this one. Early mornings or late night person?
Early mornings.
Coffee or wine?
Oh, both.
If you're in a really good mood, what will absolutely make you laugh every time?
A fun person sitting next to me, just having fun and belly laughing.
Do you trust people straight away, or do they have to earn it?
They have to earn it, but I do try to trust until I don't.
Yep. What annoys you more, people who talk too much or people who say nothing?
People who say nothing.
Boring.
I know.
Texting or phone calls?
Phone calls. I'm old-fashioned.
And hopefully by video these
I like
days.
to hear voices.
Yeah. Have you always been good at reading people, or did life force you to get better at it?
I definitely think that my career made me get better at it, but other life circumstances has certainly even made me get better at it.
What drains you faster, small talk or confrontation?
Small talk.
I love a good fight, she says. You're uncomfortable. Do you laugh, go quiet, or change the subject?
Go quiet.
I could see that straight away. Or laugh. If you weren't doing what you do now, what do you think you'd be doing instead?
Wow. I've always wanted to be a realtor or an interior designer. But you know what? The path that my life took, I'm so blessed. I can't imagine it any other way.
That's lovely, isn't it? I think most of us notice more than we actually think. Unfortunately, we just don't trust ourselves. So, Laurie, appreciate you coming in and sharing all that with us today. And to those of you that are listening, if you're liking the show, please subscribe. Make me happy. Otherwise, we'll see you on the next episode. And cut.